In this video, I'm going to do an example that is on page 189 out of 612 on your online textbook. You can see that there. Okay, this is how to use the r sine theta minus alpha formulae. It's a very cool technique which helps us solve equations that are seemingly unsolvable. Right, let's have a look at how to do this. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, I have r sine theta minus alpha. Well, if I expand that, that becomes r sine theta cos alpha minus r cos theta sine alpha. Let me write that out again. R sine theta cos alpha minus r cos theta sine alpha. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare these two. They are the same. We are trying to make them exactly the same. I've got a sine and I've got a sine, so they match up. That means this root 3 must be the same as the leftovers. So r cos alpha must equal root 3. Same thing here. So r sine alpha must equal what? Well, there's nothing here. What's the invisible number where we don't have 1? It's 1. Now, we're going to find alpha and we're going to find r. I'm going to stop by finding alpha. We know a little identity that says that sine divided by cos is tan. So I'm going to divide these two. So r sine alpha divided by r cos alpha must be the same as 1 over root 3. Well, r cancels with r, which leaves me tan alpha is equal to 1 over root 3. Now we're in radians. The question tells us we're in radians, so make sure your calculator is in radians. And we're going to do shift tan of 1 over root 3. Calculator comes back and tells me that the answer to that one is 1/6 pi. We're not used to writing it like that, so let's write it as pi over 6. So now we found alpha. I'm going to write it in the corner here so I remember it. Now we're going to go and we're going to find r. We know another identity with sine and cos. We know that sine squared plus cos squared equals 1. So how can I use this to my advantage? Well, I'm going to square and add these two expressions. R squared cos squared alpha is equal to 3. I've squared both sides. R squared sine squared alpha equals 1. I've squared both sides. Now I'm going to add them. R squared cos squared alpha plus r squared sine squared alpha is equal to 3 plus 1. These both have an r squared, so I take it out. So r squared times, and cos squared plus sine squared is 1, is equal to 4. That means r must be 2. Now it's not minus 2 because we were told that r is greater than 0. And that's how to do the first part. So what have we done now? We've worked out our alpha, we've worked out our r. So let's actually answer the question. We had to write that in the expression r sine theta minus alpha. So let's put that in. And we get 2 sine theta minus pi over 6. Right, question B. Oh, 2 actually. State the maximum and minimum values. Now we've turned this into sine. So think of a sine graph. Its maximum is at 1. Its minimum's at minus 1. So what's the effect of this 2 here? Well, it's going to make the maximum become 2 because 2 times 1 is 2. And the minimum is therefore going to be minus 2. So there's my max and there's my min. Part 3 says to sketch the graphs. Now for ease, let's just have a look and see what the graphs look like. It gets a little bit tricky to try and do this by hand, especially on my little mini whiteboard. So let's see if we can just get there. Apologies for the slowness of the technology. And there is the graph. So let's have a look at what the graph's done. So it's gone, its maximum and minimum have become 2 and minus 2, and everything's been shifted by pi over 6. Now, if you were using your calculator on this, I would suggest when you use table mode, you go up in pi over 6, and that'll give you all the values you need. So there is the graph. Right, what was the third part of that question? Sorry, the fourth part of the question. On the fourth part of the question, we were asked to solve. So let's get down to the bottom of the page. Right, so we're trying to solve that equation. Now, on its surface, that equation up until now would have been unsolvable for you. So you wouldn't have been able to do it. But we can now, because we've turned root 3 sine theta minus cos theta into 2 sine theta minus pi over 6. So all I need to do is make the 2 sine theta minus pi over 6 equal to 1. Now it's easily solvable. Divide by 2, that equals a half. It's a sine one, so shift sine of a half. Well, you should know it off by heart, but if you don't, it's pi over 6. So that means theta minus pi over 6 is equal to pi over 6. Don't believe me? Use your calculator and go shift sine of a half, and it comes out to be pi over 6. Now remember, this is sine, so sine is 180 minus 180 is pi, so it's going to be theta minus pi over 6 equals pi minus pi over 6. Take the pi over 6 to that side, so theta is equal to 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. Take the pi over 6 to this side, it cancels, and we get that theta is equal to pi. And there are my two solutions between 0 and 2 pi.